What's up, everybody? This is Ripples in Wales back for another video. I hope you're all doing well and having a great day wherever you are in the world and whatever you're doing. Wednesday, 22nd of October, 6 a.m. Welcome back to the show. Alright, we're on the early doors record this morning, and the acoustics is likely to be a little bit different because obviously family's asleep and I am having to do this quietly in another room. I've been up since 4:30 this morning. I couldn't sleep. We're on a full moon cycle, aren't we? Or something like that. It was a new moon. Went outside here and the stars are so bright. Had a coffee and thought, right, let's get into the news. So much is moving, so much is changing. It's quite difficult keeping up with the news cycles, actually. Specifically towards, this change in structure of world finance. Let's get into it anyway. There's been a big pullback in the markets overnight, which is to be expected. I told you we're in this big chop and volatility. I'm drawing the information from the real good TA guys. A lot of them are saying, there's a while for this to kind of play out. And again, when we look at some of the more esoteric sources of our information, Bearable Guy 123's calendar, it did kind of say October, November, things were likely to be a bit messy when we're in that level playing field, right? So moving sideways is going to be kind of this up and down, shorting and longing, and this is where the people get really washed out. It's a bit like a washing machine cycle. So just don't do anything with your tokens. Just sit on your hands and keep your eyes on the kind of the bigger picture with things. Anyway, if you haven't met me before and you're on YouTube, this is my Twitter profile at Ripples in Wales. I'm on here pretty much, so come and give me a follow on here. All right, cool. Bitcoin's had a drawdown. It went up yesterday to 114. I think it's back down at 108 now. Big drawdowns. This is Ethereum. These are all on the dailies, by the way, and you've seen a big cascade and jump up and a wind down. And the same with XRP. It's just it's meandering above that line, but that flush out was really necessary to reset the fear and greed indexes. I think you're fine. I think things are holding up well. There's good volume coming through. So we just wait. But what was interesting is gold and silvers. Silver's come right back down, and so has gold. Well, not right back down. It's retraced from about 55 to 48. Bit of a bounce. But once they break these parabolas, it's very difficult for them normally to get back. Anyway, this is a video by Altcoin Daily, and this was regarding I think the Federal Reserve meeting yesterday. So I'm just going to bring this back to the beginning and play this for you when I can.
DeFi.
One
this
second.
Is big. If you told me a year ago you're going to be at the Fed discussing regulated DeFi, I'd be right, Michael? It's a crazy idea, isn't it?
The Federal Reserve, the Fed, the largest independent agency in the United States, the entity that controls the money, the Fed, just had a crypto conference. This is the first crypto conference they've ever had, so this is historic.
It's a good thing. It's my way of saying it's a good thing.
And they sent a bold message to crypto investors.
This is an acknowledgement that distributed ledgers and crypto assets are no longer on the fringes.
And we're going to cover that in a minute, but that was a video about Altcoin Daily. Shout out to them. I don't normally cover their content because they suppressed XRP coverage for about 7 years. I believe that they quite owned and controlled this channel by the mainstream venture capital funds, the hedge funds. But you see, because XRP's now become so big and powerful, they can't bloody ignore it anymore, so they're having to cover it. But it's not just XRP. You've got like tokens like Link and Tau. My friends, some of the smart quants in my group have been telling me about Tau for ages. But anyway, we're going to look at that in a minute. So this is a Federal Reserve, like talking about like the integration of crypto payment networks into their flows, interwoven into. I mean, this is crazy. I've been here since 2015, and to think that this is now just getting rewired is unbelievable. You are at the beginning of this journey now. We're almost at day one. So you can see where the volatility is happening in the markets, right? We talked about this before, these crazy volatility. Why? Because Wall Street are yet to come in. They haven't got the law. They haven't got the regulations. And so when all these things happen, come together, then the markets are going to send, right? But in between, they're going to capitalize upon this uncertainty. Your job is just to sit on the outsides and do nothing. All right, this is by Chad Steingraber, and this is Eric Trump going pretty hard on the banks. Let's have a listen.
They tried to take us out. They tried to destroy our company based on weaponization toward my father because he was a politician and he was running for commander-in-chief of the United States, and they wanted to see him gone. And they wanted to see us broken. They wanted to see us bankrupt. And now, in turn, we won that battle. The battle I'd like to win against the big banks is I'd like to see them gone in such a big way. I would like to see them totally irrelevant. There's no reason these big banks need 10,000 people in a skyscraper with lavish executive offices. Guess who's paying all those expenses? You and me.
Wow. The Trump family are coming after them. And, this is a bigger picture, right? The big oligarch banks have controlled the planet for the past 500 or 600 years. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit here. Even from where I live in this part of the world, I'm speaking from Wales. If you didn't know it, the kind of hint was in my name, Ripples in Wales. Even all the royals that you see running Britain, they're all fake royals. They're not real. Those are not royals. This is all masquerading. They're not the real bloodlines. They were replaced by the people who controlled the banks, and puppets were put in. And so this banking structure, and I'm very passionate about this because truth is important to me. It's one of the things that I am like a heat-seeking missile to is truth. You can't hide it from me. I'm like a radar to it. And the extrapolation of what Eric Trump is going at here is a banking dynasty that has controlled the planet for 500 years. Okay, and we are seeing changes and cracks in that old system now, where the new entrants are going to come in and take these banks over. And it's so powerful because the banks controlled all these fake governments and central banks, and then they control the people through austerity and poverty, and it just drips through the whole of society. Okay, when you've got these banks removed out of the way, you have got a new world, an absolute new world being born, because they've controlled the masses through the banking infrastructure for eons. This is what BG123 talked about. So this is so exciting to see. I can't tell you how amazing this is, because once you remove them out of the way, we've got like so much change that's going to happen on the planet in a beautiful way. Promise you, it's going to be amazing. What a time to be alive. Let's carry on. I'm getting overexcited. So Chad Steingraber again. Chad's just smashing the news out at the minute. Full list of assets held as a spot index fund. And this is by ProShares Crypto 20 filed to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And this is amazing. So you've got Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. Bitcoin at 29%, Ethereum at 22.3%, and XRP at 17%. And you also got Solana below at 14.3%. So, you're seeing the 1, 2, 3, the 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, the big three. And eventually XRP will be at the top of that list. Okay, as they start to realize how powerful this is. Now, I've got some cool stuff to show with you later on how I think this is going to play out. Been thinking more about Bitcoin and gold and trying to kind of rationalize what's going on here. And I think I've kind of got that aha moment again. We're going to cover that on Rumble. I'll give you a kind of little snip preview on here later on. But the point is, these indexes are growing. These are unbelievable. They're going to hoover up enormous amounts of these assets. You can see also like Cardano, Chainlink, Sui at 1%, Stellar at 1%. But XRP is at 17%. Now, for all the time people who have been, talking Hedera and Stellar, are going to topple XRP, well, they're not, because you've got an 18% holding in these. Like, you can just see what they're holding to see who the big players are here. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Now, this is by Eric, I can't even pronounce that, Balashunas. Is that right? I hope I haven't butchered that. There are now 155 crypto ETF filings tracking 35 digital assets. Could easily end up seeing over 200 hit the market in the next 12 months. Very interesting. Total land rush here. Here's the list by coin. Amazing work by Jay Seth. I must give that person a follow. There we go. So let's look at them. Solana's got the most, then Bitcoin, then XRP, and Ethereum's got 10. Okay, now the reason Ethereum's got less is really interesting. I only learned this about 6 months ago, was because Ethereum's a proof of stake chain, and rather than create an ETF and get yield from it, most people would prefer just to stake their ETH and earn yield on chain. If you've got yield on chain, then you don't need essentially to go and buy an ETF, do you? You can buy the native asset and earn the yield yourself. These synthetic products are nowhere near as good as the actual things. So that's why I keyed of ETH as an interesting. But you see, at the minute, you're just starting to be able to get yield on XRP, just starting. But there's 20 filed there. There's 23 for Solana. So you can see that there's a need for Solana. Clearly, they're positioning it. Now, I don't hold enough anywhere near enough Solana, but I think it'll do the same thing as Ethereum did. But it's just a cycle behind. Excuse me. All right, so you've got all these ETFs flying. Now, Bitcoin ones are pretty much done. They're already out in the wild. But again, we're early. Let's move on. Okay, this is the Federal Reserve Governor, Christopher Waller, who was talking. We seen in the clip earlier on with Altcoin Daily, who claims that crypto assets are increasingly going to be woven into the fabric of the payment and financial systems. Okay, the key thing is payments. Okay, payments are going to be stable coins. We've talked about this on my channel tons of times because nation state money is not going to go anywhere. Okay, this is the thing Brad talked about in 2018. Brad Garlinghouse. He said before nation-state money disappears that the governments will roll out the tanks and guns. And he's true. You know, nation-state money should be here to stay because we need an exchange, a medium of exchange for the time being. But these crypto assets are going to be the software that the nation-states are going to create their stablecoins on. So they're going to, like just tokenization, you're going to mint these stablecoins on various chains. XRP LB1, Ethereum B1, I dare say Stellar and Hedera. Anyway, but let's play this for you now. If it'll play.
The distributed ledgers and crypto assets are no longer on the fringes, but are increasingly woven into the fabric of the payment and financial system. Now, before we hear from these innovators, I would like to touch on roles that the Federal Reserve plays to support the private sector. These include serving as a convener to solve coordination problems and operating core payment and settlement infrastructure. We are also looking ahead, conducting hands-on research on tokenization, using smart contracts, and the intersection of AI and payments for use in our own payment systems. We do this to understand the innovation happening within the payment system, as well as to evaluate whether these technologies could provide opportunities to upgrade our own payment infrastructures and to enable us to have deeper conversations with the industry.
Payment infrastructures. The words jump off the page to me. Do they jump off the page to you? Payment infrastructures. So what's going on in the world with the payments? Well, we know that there's change going on by the end of November, right? What is that? It's the ISO 20022 messaging standard. And forget about crypto for a minute. That's just a standardization, okay? Crypto can be parallel with that, and it can be how can I put the word for that? It can be synchronous with it. Okay, it isn't. The two are very separate. One is just a standardization. Okay, it's kind of a meta standard of data that can be incorporated. But as far as I understand it, I'm not a geek on this, but the crypto can be synchronous with that. Okay, so the two can work in parallel. And the idea of the ISO 2022 standards is to replace the old MTMX, which was set by who? Swift. Bob Way talked about this back in the day. Okay, and he all said, Anders covered this, XRP Anders said that, he was sharing Bob Way's work, excuse me, saying this is a bigger thing than people realize. When you change the standardization, everyone's mandated to change it, the infrastructure has to change, then guess what? They're now able to use crypto assets through their workflows. So you're seeing an architectural change right underneath our feet. Okay, let's move on. Again, this is the same video really. I don't really want to play this, but the subjective views, he was the one that covered it again. And again, it's an acknowledgement that DLT and crypto assets are no longer on the fringes, but are increasingly woven into the fabric of the financial payment systems. Wow, it's unbelievable. Okay, and again, this is a takeaway message by Summer Mersinger. The key takeaway messages from Government Waller in his opening remarks. This is a new era for the Federal Reserve in payments. The DeFi industry is no longer viewed as suspicious or scorn. Now that's big, right? The DeFi. DeFi is like decentralized finance. It just means like lending on chain, yeah? And yield on chain. The industry is not viewed with suspicion or scorn. Rather, today, you're welcomed to the conversation on the future of payments in the United States and on our home ground. Well, that means an unbelievable U-turn. Now, where did we learn about the Federal Reserve? Our dear friend, the Ripple Ridder. Okay, and what in this image might be to do with the Federal Reserve? It's the Titanic. And what ripples has the hell Titanic got to do with the Federal Reserve? Well, if you go down the rabbit hole, you'll understand that JP Morgan were the ones who sunk the Titanic, and they were behind, partly to do with the reason. That's what the conspiracy theorists, those of you who enjoy putting your tinfoil hats on as well, as much as I do, were partially to blame, according to many sources. Now, again, you have to do your own research on that, but I think it was the White Star Line Marine who built the Titanic and her sister ships, were very tied at the hip with JPM and their families, and JPM just managed to walk off the ship before it set sail with all the richest families of the world who were opposing the Federal Reserve creation 113 years ago next year for 2026. So 113 years ago, the Federal Reserve was created, and now the great architects and masons are sunsetting it and turning it back around. Okay, so the reason it was supposedly sunk was to get rid of the families who were opposing the Federal Reserve, and they were the Astors. Okay, you can go and look at this. This is what the Ripple Ridder is showing you. He's got JPM and a character on the right, and the Ripple Ridder walking through with a crow on his shoulder with the Titanic in the background. Federal Reserve 113. Go and have a look at my threads on it. So we're seeing the change, aren't we? And also, 2026, I've talked about this with you before, it is the America 250, so 250 years since the revolution of 1776. Okay, it's super important, but also it's 113 years since the creation of Federal Reserve. So just see the numerology implications there. Brian Armstrong, he's the CEO of Coinbase, heading to DC tomorrow, so excited to roll up our sleeves. The key decision makers to get market structure to POTUS desks. Now, market structure is taxonomy and clarity. He says, is an all-time high, which is why we've seen both sides commit to getting great work on the bill, even during a shutdown. Okay, so it's all going on behind the scenes, right? Things changing. And as we go forth, tokenization, this is by securitized tokenization, is the future of finance. Okay, this is quite interesting. Just a super short clip.
Tokenization, you've heard this term, that's the future of finance.
Yeah, so, again, let's go back to the platforms that are going to be enable tokenization. The XRP Alta DEX, and, Solana's got an amazing throughput. These are likely to be the major platforms that benefit from tokenization. And to finish off, this is smoke on the Nasdaq, and this is a really interesting clip.
I think it's encouraging, Nick, that we're seeing it broaden out beyond Bitcoin, and we're starting to understand the fundamentals and other applications when you think about the institutional use cases for the digital asset space.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that the early kind of mover in this was Bitcoin particularly. But the way that I really like to see this is we're building a new financial wallet system. So if you picture tomorrow's wallet, we've got Bitcoin. So they're the digital gold. They sit inside and act as this finite supply, borderless transactions, and really self-custodied with a password, not a vault. Whether you're hedging inflation or sort of dodging local currency turmoil, very censorship-resistant store of value. And then you've got Ethereum, so that's the app platform. So Ethereum's the wallet's app store. Smart contracts so that you trade, borrow, or earn yield without a bank. And owning ETH is really just like holding gas in a global financial operating system, one that's open source and runs 24/7. And you've got XRP. So they're the cross-border bridge. And XRP works really behind the scenes as that instant FX bridge. So banks convert dollars to XRP, beam it abroad in 3 seconds, and cash it out in local currency, potentially cutting remittance fees from 7% to under 1%. And then you've got Solana, the high-speed rail. So Solana provides the commuter rail, really hundreds of transactions per second with very tiny fees. So your subway tap, in-game purchase, or loyalty point redemption could all ride on the Solana rails without you even noticing. Then we've got stablecoins. Stablecoins such as USDC act as tokenized dollars, really clearing anytime, anywhere, and fully backed by short-term treasuries. And they really marry crypto speed with the safety of US debt, turning your phone into sort of this real-time dollar account that you can spend worldwide. So this is really a suite of products that have very specific functions that are reimagining the entire financial stack, and it's really opening back up.
Wow. And this is really important that we separate the wood for the trees here and remove maximalism. I'm always the one having a bit of banter towards the Bitcoin maxis myself, but when we zoom out for the bigger picture, we can all see that each of these tokens has a very specific point in use, and we're going to go into that in the Rumble channel later on today. But each of them has their own sector, okay, and they form a bigger, wider picture of use cases. Now, all these in the future will be buried. You won't see them. They'll just be occurring in your daily usage. Like we just, log on our smartphones, but we don't really think about what software it's running on. We just, click, whatever we want to go on at Google, or you go on whatever search engine you use, and whatever app you want to use, and those native smart contracts will just occur as a matter of things. So all these tokens are going to be in the mix of it, and we're starting to see the big four. This is the big four, isn't it? It's Bitcoin, ETH, XRP, and Solana. So holding some sort of share of all of those should be really good for an investment for the future, I believe. Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. All right, moving on to the final part of, I always close it out with these XRP memes. Kind of the reason I cover this is just to give you guys an idea of what I'm doing. Again, this is not financial advice for myself. I've taken positions in these about, I think I published this about, when was it? It was about 2 weeks ago. I got onto these on day one, and I said how big they were going to be. And I think we're about to see in the next 2 months these things really grow into levels that people quite are going to struggle to grasp with. They've already made some moves, and I don't think these moves are sustainable. I think we'll see pullbacks, so don't ape in. But you know, Army was at 4 million the other day. It's now almost at 9. Fuzzy was at 10 or 11. It's now 22. These have doubled. Again, drop. These are solid tokens with a good team behind them. The thing is, when you're choosing the meme projects to have a small speculative play with, is that you're choosing the team. The teams that have been relentless. They've been busy. They've been non-stop in the downtime. It's all about mindshare memes. I have to explain these in a bigger video. Someone asked in the comments the other day, I think it's a guy called James, and I'll do a specific video to people to kind of get their head around these memes. Bear, another strong community run project. ATM, another one, and these will, you know, the market cap of the biggest ones of these in a minute, 22 million, which is Fuzzy, right? Okay, if you were to compare this to the largest market cap of all the ones on, say, Ethereum and Solana, they'd be almost either a billion or more. And that's at 22 million. And, you know, they're the bigger projects, like the ones I'm really into, like Army and Drop and things. They're at 5 and 9 million. So the upside for these potentially is unparalleled. Now, I only have put 2% of my portfolio in there because my XRP is super important, but I do take a speculative hedge on these. Anyhow, I told you I wanted to kind of close off with a couple of things, and with the and we're going to talk about more on this in the Rumble. I'll do a second video later on, hopefully for you all. But I talked about kind of the gold. I mentioned gold earlier on. This is something that's been playing on my mind. And this image by Ross van der Meer keeps coming back. I gotta kind of keep my lips a little bit closed on this channel with YouTube because of various things. We know have been deplatformed here before, but the gold part with Bitcoin was very interesting to me, and I've got some new ideas on the way Bitcoin is being used instead of gold in this new financial system, because I believe the old gold was being held and contained and controlled, hence what this is now referring to. And I'm going to go deeper into that in Rumble, but I can now see Bitcoin's purpose better. I had a bit of revelation to do with it, that it is being used as a form of digital gold on these new rails, because the old rails were compromised. So the old financial system consisted of the banks running these central banking orders, and then the gold being the old hedge, which they then moved off to these offshore islands. You can see here they've got this, it seems to be a crest. Again, I'm going to be very careful. Look at my cursor. That is the British flag and a crest. And then you've got the offshore accounts with the gold connected to it. Now, these are all important because it gives you an idea that the gold and stuff was being controlled. Anyway, we're going to go into that in the Rumble video later on. And we're also going to cover something to do with this, which is Wall Street coming in and a storm. We'll go into that further on the Rumble channel later on today. But as we've said to you before, we're in this kind of waiting period between October and November. And I think December's got clear skies. But again, we'll go into this in more depth on the Rumble channel. So just cover the news here today. All right, I'm Ripples in Wales. Thanks for listening to the video. I really appreciate you all. Please like, drop a comment. Let me know where you are in the world watching this. I always find that fascinating. It's one thing that, just drop a comment. Let me know where you are in the world. I'd be very interested to see. I'll reply. And yeah, thanks for watching the video. Drop a like, please. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe to the channel. I'm just going to get the subs up on this. And yeah, again, thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Be blessed. Bye for now.